I had always imagined this moment, the one where I sit by the phone, hear my husband's voice, and feel that familiar warmth in my chest, knowing he's just a call away. But that morning, as I prepared for my usual video call with him, a sense of dread gnawed at me. This wasn't how I had pictured it. I was sitting on the couch in our living room, the sun filtering through the curtains, casting a soft glow around the room. I had just finished unpacking my suitcase from my last solo trip, and his message popped up. It was brief. Just landed. Let's catch up later, babe. I smiled. He was always busy when he was away, but it was all right because we had this one thing, our late night calls. Every night, we would talk about everything and nothing at all, and it kept our connection alive. But there was something different today, a growing feeling in the pit of my stomach that I couldn't shake off. Maybe it was because I had sent him a playful text earlier in the day, something about our upcoming anniversary plans, and he didn't respond. Maybe it was because, after 4 years of marriage, I knew the little things, the silences, the sudden changes in tone. As I tapped on his name on the video call screen, I took a deep breath. The call connected, and his face appeared, but something was wrong. The background looked unfamiliar. It was the same soft blue ocean I remembered, but it wasn't our honeymoon beach. His expression froze for a split second before his familiar smile returned. Hey, babe, I'm so sorry. I just landed and didn't get a chance to call before, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. His gaze wasn't fully on me. He was distracted, looking around nervously, like he didn't want to be caught doing something he wasn't supposed to. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Jack, where are you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He cleared his throat. Oh, just a little getaway. I thought I'd unwind before the meeting tomorrow. You know how it is. His voice was forced to casual, like he was trying to cover something up. But it didn't feel right. I recognized the spot. The same beach we had walked on during our honeymoon. The one where we swam in the clear blue water and talked about our future. This wasn't just a getaway. Then I saw her, a woman in a red bikini, walking up behind him. She wrapped her arm around his waist, and I froze. My hand trembled as I held the phone up to my ear. Jack, who is that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The tightness in my chest felt like it was suffocating me. I knew that voice, the laugh, the way she stood so close to him, as if it was normal. Her presence was suffocating. Jack's eyes darted nervously. Ella, it's nothing. Just a friend from work. We were going over some things for the presentation. But I knew. I could see it in the way their bodies were pressed together, the way she smiled up at him like she had a claim on him. And just like that, the knot in my stomach tightened. The world around me seemed to shrink. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't just some business trip. He had brought her to the very place we had celebrated our love, the place where we made promises to each other. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart dropped. Jack was lying, and worse, he didn't think I would find out. Jack, I whispered, my voice trembling. What's going on? But he didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked over his shoulder at the woman, who was now staring at me through the camera. A slow, smug smile spread across her face. I felt my anger rise, burning through me like a wildfire. I hung up the call before he could speak again. The silence in the room was deafening. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I wanted to cry, but no tears came either. Everything I had believed and everything I thought we were was a lie. He had taken her to our honeymoon beach, to the place that held our most precious memories. He didn't even care to hide it. I felt numb, but I was also furious. How dare he do this? How dare he betray me like this after everything we had built together? I stood up, my mind racing. This wasn't just about Jack anymore. It was about me. It was about taking back what was mine, my dignity, my self-respect, my life. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. The room felt suffocating as I stared at the blank screen on my phone, the echo of Jack's voice still ringing in my ears. He had betrayed me, betrayed us. I had been so naive, thinking our love was unbreakable, that we were stronger than anything life could throw at us. But now, it felt like everything had crumbled into dust. I stood there in the middle of the living room, the phone still in my hand. I could feel my pulse in my temples, my heart pounding louder than I could ever remember. The quiet of the house only made the situation feel worse, like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I had to do something. I wasn't going to let this slide. Jack might have thought he could sneak around behind my back, but he was about to find out that I wasn't some passive, trusting wife. I had my dignity, and I was going to hold on to it, no matter what it took. I grabbed my bag and rushed out of the house, the cold air outside hitting me like a slap. The streets seemed unfamiliar now, like everything had shifted in a way I couldn't comprehend. As I walked toward my car, I felt a sense of numbness washing over me, but I also felt something else, anger. The kind of anger that burned like fire, filling every inch of my body. Jack had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The drive to the hotel was quick, my mind working in overdrive. I couldn't let Jack think that everything would just go back to normal once he got home. No, I had to confront him head on and show him the consequences of his actions. I parked my car in the lot outside the hotel where he had claimed to be on his business trip. My hand trembled as I reached for my phone and dialed his number. This time, I wasn't going to wait for him to pick up. I wasn't going to wait for him to explain his lies. He answered on the second ring. "Hey babe, just got back to the hotel finally. It's been a long day." His voice sounded so casual, so normal. But the woman on the other end of the phone, wasn't he the same one who had smiled at him every day, who had stood by him, trusting him? This woman, the one calling him now, was furious. This woman had had enough. "Jack," I said, my voice steady but cold. I saw the picture. There was a pause. Then I heard him sigh, a sigh full of guilt. "Ella, listen, no," I interrupted, the tears finally threatening to spill, but I wouldn't let them. "Not yet. You don't get to explain yourself. You don't get to lie to me anymore. I saw everything. I saw you with her at our honeymoon beach. You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you?" I could feel his hesitation through the phone. "Ella, please. It's not what you think." "Don't," I snapped, my grip tightening around the phone. "Don't you dare tell me it's not what I think. You brought her there. You brought her to the place where we made our promises, where we shared our love, and you don't even have the decency to be honest about it." I could hear him breathing heavily, probably trying to think of some excuse to offer, but there was no excuse. There was nothing he could say to fix this. "Ella," he began, his voice quieter now, "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It just happened." I was confused. "Confused?" I scoffed, shaking my head, though I knew he couldn't see me. "You weren't confused when you were holding her, laughing with her, kissing her. You weren't confused then, Jack. You were just selfish." The words stung, and I could feel the emotional weight of them pressing on me, but it was the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, was the only thing that would set me free. "Jack," I said, my voice now low, controlled. "You can go ahead and pretend everything's fine when you get home. You can keep up the act, but I'm done. I won't play this game with you anymore." There was silence on the other end, a long, agonizing silence. And then, with an almost defeated tone, Jack spoke again. "I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant to hurt you." I didn't even flinch at his words. They were empty now, meaningless. "You already did," I said, the words cutting through the silence. "And I am not going to be the fool who sits around waiting for you to fix it. You don't get to hurt me and then expect me to forgive you just like that." I ended the call before he could say anything else, knowing it was pointless. There was nothing more to say. It was over. The drive back home felt surreal. It was as if I was floating through a world that no longer made sense, where nothing was as it seemed. I couldn't shake the image of Jack with her Lily Brown on that beach, where I had once thought we were building something lasting. Now, that place was tainted. My heart felt like it had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. And no matter how hard I tried to put it back together, it just wouldn't fit. I walked into the house, the silence greeting me like an old friend. The empty space felt colder than it ever had before, and the thought of Jack returning here, pretending that everything was fine, made my stomach turn. But I couldn't let him think he could just waltz back in. No, I needed to make him understand the weight of what he'd done. I was done being the loving wife who always forgave. I was done playing the role of the supportive partner who turned a blind eye to betrayal. Jack needed to learn that actions have consequences. If he thought he could walk away from this without facing the price of his lies, he was sorely mistaken. I took a deep breath, grabbing my phone again. It was time to take control. I opened the Photos app and found the screenshot of the picture that had destroyed everything. The beach, the woman in his arms, the caption from Lily. It was all there, in black and white. I posted it online with a simple caption. "So this is how my husband spends his business trips." My fingers trembled as I hit share, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to see the likes, the comments, or the people who would surely start to wonder what had happened. I walked into the kitchen, trying to steady my breath, but the weight of the situation kept pressing down on me. I was shaking now, but it wasn't from fear, it was from the surge of power that had begun to course through me. I wasn't the victim here. I wasn't the one who had betrayed my vows. This time, I was the one in control. I had a plan. I wasn't going to just sit around and wait for Jack to come home and try to explain himself. No, I was going to confront him. I was going to make sure he knew that I wasn't the woman he could walk all over. But I also had to be strategic. I couldn't let him see how deeply he had hurt me, not just yet. I couldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing how much he had torn me apart. This time, I was going to play the game smarter. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Natalie. Ella, are you okay? I saw your post. Is everything all right? I stared at the message for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keys. I couldn't bring myself to reply just yet, but I knew I couldn't keep this inside forever. I had to tell someone. And there was only one person who had been with me through every high and low, someone who knew the depth of my pain. I quickly typed a response. No, Nat, everything's not all right. Jack's been lying to me. I found out he's been seeing someone else, someone from his past. He has been lying about his business trip and took her to the beach we went to for our honeymoon. I'm done. I'm not waiting for him to apologize. I'm not going to play the fool anymore. I hit send and placed the phone down, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. It wasn't that I didn't still love Jack, or that I didn't feel the sting of his betrayal. It was that I had finally reached a point where I was no longer willing to let his lies define me. I was going to make sure that he learned the true cost of his actions. The following morning, Jack returned home. The moment he stepped through the door, I could tell he had rehearsed his excuses, the words already lined up in his head, ready to spill from his lips. But he wasn't ready for me. Not this time. Hey, Jack said, his voice soft and tentative, as if he expected me to fall into his arms, to forgive him on the spot. I didn't even look up. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, the same way I always did when he walked in. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing my pain, of knowing how deeply he had hurt me. He had no idea what was coming. How was your trip? I asked, my voice icy. Jack seemed taken aback, but he quickly recovered. It was fine. Same old, he said, brushing it off like it was no big deal. I missed you though. I raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. My mind was working faster than my emotions could catch up. You didn't respond to my message last night, I said, my tone flat. Did you see what I posted? Jack froze. The room seemed to hold its breath. I saw it, he admitted, his voice faltering. And how do you explain it? I asked, my eyes meeting his for the first time. Jack shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. Ella, look, I can explain. Explain? I laughed bitterly. You've already explained everything, Jack. Your actions have already said more than enough. I stood up, walking slowly toward him. You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought I wouldn't see the woman you took to our honeymoon beach, the place where we promised to be together forever. I paused, letting the words sink in, the silence hanging thick between us. But you were wrong, I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm not going to be your fool anymore. You don't get to treat me like this, and you definitely don't get to lie to me about it. His face turned pale, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to find the right words. But there was nothing he could say now. The truth had already come to light. The woman he had been with, his lover, had been right there in the picture, in our memories, in the place where our love was supposed to last forever. But it wasn't, and it was time for him to pay the price. The tension in the room was unbearable. Jack's eyes darted around, desperate for an escape, but there was nowhere to hide. I was no longer the woman he had left behind, the one who trusted him blindly. I was stronger now, sharper, and determined to make him feel the weight of his betrayal. For a moment, we stood there, facing each other. I could see the regret in his eyes, but it was too little too late. Regret didn't erase the truth. Regret didn't take away the hurt he had caused. You need to leave, I said, my voice steady, but my heart was racing. I wasn't going to let him back into my life without consequences. Pack your things and leave. Jack's face fell, his shoulders slumping. Ella, please, don't do this, he begged, his voice cracking. We've been through so much. I love you. I made a mistake. I was confused. I never meant to hurt you." I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my chest. Confused? Really? That's the best you can do? I stepped closer to him, my anger simmering. "You've been lying to me for months, Jack. You didn't just make a mistake, you deliberately hurt me. You chose her over me, and now you want me to believe you're sorry?" I could see the panic in his eyes as the realization hit him. "Ella, please," he repeated, reaching out for me, but I stepped back, not allowing him to touch me. "I'll do anything to fix this. We can go to therapy. We can work through this." Work through this? I almost spat the words, my chest tightening with disgust. "No, Jack, you don't get to fix this. You've already made your choice. You've already shown me who you really are. I'm not going to pretend everything is okay, just because you want it to be." He opened his mouth to say something else, but I held up a hand to stop him. "No, I don't want to hear it. I don't need to hear it. I've heard enough." I turned away from him, walking over to the living room, where the remnants of our life together lay in pieces. Pictures of us laughing, of us on our honeymoon, of moments I once cherished, now felt like cruel reminders of how foolish I had been. I could feel Jack behind me, his footsteps, hesitant, unsure. I knew he wanted to fix it, but the damage was already done. The trust was broken. The love had withered. "Jack, I'm done," I said softly, my voice a little weaker than I wanted it to be. "I can't keep living in this lie." There was a long silence, but then I heard him move. "I'll go," he said, his voice barely audible, and I didn't look back as I heard him pack his things, the sound of his clothes rustling like a final goodbye. When I heard the door close, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders, and yet the emptiness remained. It was over. Jack was gone, but the road to healing wasn't going to be easy. I had no idea what came next, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let him tear me down any longer. I sat down on the couch, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, all of them conflicting. Part of me still loved Jack, and that was the hardest thing to accept. How could I love someone who had hurt me so deeply? But the other part of me, this part that had been buried under layers of love and trust, was strong. It was angry, and it was finally coming to the surface. I reached for my phone again and found myself staring at the text messages between Jack and Lily. I had kept them as evidence of his betrayal, but now they only fueled the fire in my chest. They spoke of love, of longing, of secrets shared in private. It was everything I had feared, but it was also my motivation. I wasn't going to let Jack walk away without facing the consequences. And Lily, she wasn't going to get away with destroying my life either. I needed to make sure they both understood that betrayal had a price. As I scrolled through the messages, I came across one that caught my attention. It was from Lily to Jack, dated just 2 days ago. "I can't wait to see you again. It feels like we never missed a beat." The words stung, but they also gave me clarity. This wasn't just about Jack. This was about taking back control. This was about making sure that my voice was heard, loud and clear. I wasn't going to let them both walk away with their lives intact, as if nothing had happened. I made a decision right there, sitting alone in the quiet house. It was time to take action. I quickly began to write a message to Natalie. "I need your help. I'm not going to let them get away with this. It's time to fight back." As I hit send, I felt a sense of determination wash over me. I wasn't going to be a passive participant in my own heartbreak anymore. I was going to fight for myself, for my dignity, and for the justice I deserved. The following days were a blur of emotion, strategy, and quiet resolve. Jack was gone, but his absence left an overwhelming void, one that I had no idea how to fill. I spent most of my time working, keeping my mind occupied, but every quiet moment felt like a reminder of the pain I was hiding beneath a cool exterior. But I wasn't going to let it consume me. No, I had a plan, an unstoppable drive to take control of my life again, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I had learned from my mistakes. I wasn't the same naive woman who had married Jack 3 years ago, thinking that love would always keep us together. I had been broken, but I was healing, stronger than before. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, talking to friends, and researching my options. I wasn't going to allow Jack to escape the consequences of his betrayal. And Lily? She wasn't going to get off scot-free either. Natalie had been my anchor throughout this process, offering advice and support without question. She was the first person I'd reached out to when I realized what Jack had done. And she had stood by me every step of the way, encouraging me to be strong, to stand up for myself. As I sat at my desk, preparing to make my next move, I thought about what Jack had said when he begged me to forgive him. He had promised everything would go back to normal, that things would work themselves out. He even talked about therapy, as if that could undo everything he had done. But I wasn't interested in therapy. What I needed was justice. I needed him to see that actions have consequences. I took a deep breath, glancing at the phone in my hand. I had decided to make the first move, the first of many. I was going to expose Jack and Lily for what they were, and I wasn't going to be subtle about it. I opened the social media app and uploaded a post, along with a photo I had found of them together, something I knew would shake things up. The caption was simple, but it carried the weight of my emotions. When your husband takes his lover to the place you thought was sacred, betrayal at its finest. I sat back and stared at the screen, watching the post go live. I wasn't sure how this would unfold, but I knew one thing: Jack and Lily were going to have to answer for what they did. As the notifications started flooding in, I couldn't help but feel a sick satisfaction. My post was getting attention, more than I had anticipated. Comments were pouring in, some expressing sympathy, others disbelief, and many more questioning Jack's actions. It was as if the world was finally waking up to the truth. And then, there was a message from Jack. He had seen the post. His response was instant, a string of desperate texts begging for me to take it down, apologizing profusely, claiming that I was overreacting. But I was done listening to his lies. I wasn't going to be the woman who stayed quiet anymore. I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I didn't respond to his messages right away. Instead, I let the silence linger, just as it had in the moments before I hung up on him during that video call. Let him stew in his guilt. Let him realize that I wasn't the same woman he had once taken for granted. As the evening settled in, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Natalie. Ella, are you sure about this? You know what will happen next. It's going to get messy. I didn't hesitate to reply. I know, Nat, but I'm done. I can't keep living in the shadows of his lies. I've been quiet for too long. It's time for them both to face the consequences of their actions. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jack calling, but I didn't pick up. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of hearing my voice. The truth was out now, and no amount of begging or pleading would change that. The next few days were a whirlwind. My post had gone viral. People were talking, and the story was spreading like wildfire. It wasn't too long before Jack's colleagues and even some of our mutual friends started reaching out, some offering support, others expressing disbelief. But one thing was certain: Jack's reputation was crumbling. And Lily? She was already feeling the heat. I heard through the grapevine that she had been confronted by some of her own friends, her actions exposed for all to see. But even with all this unfolding, I couldn't bring myself to feel any joy. In fact, I felt a deep sense of emptiness. Was this really what I wanted? Was this the revenge I had been seeking? I sat down one night, staring at the screen, reflecting on everything that had happened. For the first time in days, I felt a pang of doubt. I didn't want this chaos. I didn't want to destroy lives, even if they had been the ones to destroy mine. That's when it hit me. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it for justice. I wasn't seeking to hurt Jack or Lily. I was seeking to reclaim my life. I wanted them to understand the cost of their actions, not because I wanted to watch them suffer, but because I needed to heal. Jack might never truly understand the pain he caused, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was taking control of my own narrative. And this was only the beginning. As the days passed, I began to see the ripple effects of my decision. The attention on social media didn't die down. In fact, it seemed to only grow stronger. I received messages from people I hadn't heard from in years, people who were suddenly concerned, offering sympathy, even support. Some reached out with genuine care, while others were just curious to know the full story. It was a strange feeling, seeing my pain being dissected by so many. But at the same time, it was liberating. I hadn't realized how much I had kept buried inside me until now. The moment I had exposed the truth, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I was no longer trapped in my silence, in my role as Jack's wife, the dutiful partner who couldn't see what was right in front of her. I had spoken out, and the world was listening. But as satisfying as the attention was, there were still moments when the reality of it all hit me. Late at night, when the house was quiet, the loneliness crept in. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of our time together. the moments I had once thought were happy. I could still feel the warmth of Jack's embrace, still hear the sound of his voice in my ears, telling me everything would be okay. But now, I could no longer hear those words without feeling the bitter sting of betrayal. I had a conversation with Natalie late one evening. She had been my rock through all of this, but even she could see the toll it was taking on me. Ella, she said softly, you've done the hardest part. You've exposed him for what he is. Now it's time to focus on you. Don't let this consume you. Don't let him or Lily have any more control over your life. Her words rang in my ears for days. She was right. I had taken the first step, but now I had to take another. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of this betrayal. I needed to heal, to move forward. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't just going to wait around for Jack to make his next move. I wasn't going to sit back and let him try to win me back with empty promises. No, this was my life now. I was in control. I started making plans for the future. I signed up for a photography class, something I had always wanted to do but had put off for years. I also began to research new career opportunities, looking for a change that would help me grow beyond the pain of my past. As the weeks went on, I became more focused on building my own happiness. I spent less time thinking about Jack and Lily and more time thinking about what I wanted for myself. I worked hard. I invested time in my hobbies, and slowly, the weight of my heartbreak began to lift. But even as I moved forward, I couldn't escape the occasional text or phone call from Jack. Each one came with an apology, a plea for forgiveness, or a promise to make things right. He even tried to apologize through my friends, sending them messages, asking them to talk to me on his behalf. But I was done listening. I had heard enough. His words no longer held any weight with me. I finally realized that no matter what Jack said or did, the truth remained the same. He had made his choice. And I was not going to allow myself to be someone's second choice, someone's consolation prize. I deserved better than that. But as I moved on, I couldn't help but wonder, did Jack ever truly love me? Was I just a placeholder for him until Lily came back into the picture? And what about her? What kind of woman does this? What kind of woman knowingly destroys a marriage, a family, just to rekindle an old flame? I couldn't answer those questions. But it didn't matter anymore. Jack and Lily were no longer my problem. I was my problem now. I had to focus on myself, on healing from the pain they had caused, and on building a future that didn't revolve around them. Then, one evening, just as I was beginning to settle into my new life, I got a message that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Jack, but this time, the message was different. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness or an apology. It was a final, desperate confession. Ella, I can't go on like this. I've made a mistake. I don't want to lose you, but I need to be honest. I've been seeing someone else. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. The message shook me to my core. Not because I was surprised, no. By now, I had expected the worst, but because it felt like the last string of hope he had left. He was telling me everything, finally admitting to the truth of his betrayal. But it was too late. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I set the phone down and took a deep breath. Part of me wanted to rage, to let him know how much his betrayal had broken me, how much he had ruined everything. But another part of me, the part that had grown stronger over the past few weeks, knew that this was the final chapter of our story. I had already let him go, and now it was time for me to truly move on. The weeks following Jack's final message were both freeing and overwhelming. I had been through so much emotional turmoil, yet a strange sense of peace began to settle in. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. Jack's confession didn't hurt as much as I had thought it would. Perhaps it was because, deep down, I had already let him go. But even with this newfound peace, there were moments when the reality of my situation hit me. I had spent 3 years of my life building a future with someone who never truly valued me. And now, I had to rebuild everything from scratch. And while I was beginning to heal, there was still that underlying fear, that lingering doubt about my own worth. How could I have been so blind to everything? Had I not seen the signs? Was I just that desperate for love? But I refused to let those thoughts define me. I wasn't going to let Jack's betrayal ruin my life any longer. I was stronger now. I had learned the hardest lesson of all, that my happiness didn't depend on anyone else. Not Jack, not Lily, not anyone. It came from within me. I threw myself into my photography classes, eager to learn and express myself through the lens. I started seeing the world differently through a new perspective. I felt a sense of liberation with every photo I took. It was as if I was rediscovering myself in ways I hadn't known were possible. And the more I embraced this new chapter, the less space I gave Jack's memory in my heart. I wasn't living for him anymore. I was living for me. But it wasn't just photography that began to heal me. I also reached out to old friends, reconnected with people I had lost touch with during my marriage. My world was growing again, and it felt good. I no longer felt isolated, no longer trapped by my past. I was building something new brick by brick, and every step felt like progress. Then came the unexpected twist. Ben Harris, the lawyer who had helped me through the divorce, who had seen my pain and understood my resolve. He had been there when I made the decision to fight back, to stand up for myself and take control. At first, I had seen him only as a professional, someone who had done his job and helped me navigate the legal maze. But as the weeks passed, I began to see him in a different light. One evening, after I had finished a photo shoot, I received a message from him. It was simple, yet it carried weight. "Hey Ella, are you free for coffee sometime this week? I was thinking about how much you've grown in the past few months, and I'd love to catch up." At first, I hesitated. A part of me was wary of jumping into anything, even something as innocent as a cup of coffee. I had just emerged from one toxic relationship, and the thought of another one, however harmless, was daunting. But then, a small voice inside me reminded me that it wasn't about replacing Jack. It was about moving forward. I was allowed to have new connections, new experiences. I agreed to meet him. The coffee shop was cozy, filled with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and soft music playing in the background. When I walked in, I spotted Ben immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, a warm smile spreading across his face as he stood to greet me. "Hey, Ella," he said, his voice calm but sincere. "It's good to see you. You look great." I smiled back, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Thanks, Ben. You too." We sat down, the conversation flowing easily between us. We talked about life, about my photography, about his work, and even shared a few laughs over stories from the past. But there was something different about this conversation, something deeper. Ben didn't just see me as the woman who had been wronged. He saw me for who I was, not just the sum of my pain and my past. He saw my strength, my independence. He saw me. As we talked, I realized something important. I wasn't ready for a relationship, but I was ready for connection. And Ben, with his patience and understanding, was someone who made that possible. He didn't rush me, didn't pressure me. He simply respected my space and let me take the lead. It was a breath of fresh air, and for the first time in months, I felt something that I had forgotten. I was capable of hope. Not the kind of hope that was tied to someone else, but the kind that was tied to my future, my potential. The kind that reminded me that I had so much more to give. As we finished our coffee, Ben asked, "So, what's next for you, Ella? You've been through so much already. What do you want for yourself now?" The question hit me harder than I expected. What did I want for myself? I thought about it for a moment, the answer coming to me easily. I want to keep growing, keep learning. I want to find a career that I'm passionate about, to travel, to live on my own terms. Ben nodded, his eyes softening. "You're on the right path, Ella. You've already come so far." We stood up to leave, and as we walked out of the coffee shop together, I felt a sense of freedom. Not just from my past, but from the weight of expectation that I had carried for so long. I wasn't living for anyone else anymore. I was living for me. As I walked away from Ben, I felt lighter than I had in months. I didn't need to rush into anything. I didn't need to fill the empty space left by Jack with someone else's love. For the first time, I felt complete on my own. The weeks following my meeting with Ben were transformative in ways I hadn't expected. I focused on my passions: photography, self-growth, and carving out a new path for myself. Every day felt like a small victory, a step further away from the pain Jack had left behind. I didn't rush anything. I let myself enjoy the freedom of choosing my own path, making my own decisions. It was a feeling I hadn't known in years. At work, I was thriving. My colleagues noticed the change in me, the way I carried myself with a newfound confidence. I was no longer the woman defined by her marriage, by her relationship. I was Ella. I was me. And that was more than enough. But then, out of nowhere, Jack reached out again. I had been waiting for it. in some part of my mind. Even though I had moved on, I knew this wasn't the last time I'd hear from him. His message came late one evening, after I had returned from a photo shoot. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, and when I saw the name, my heart skipped. Ella, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say this. I've messed up. I never should have let you go. I'm truly sorry. If you ever change your mind, I'm here. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to lash out at him, to remind him of the pain he caused, to tell him I didn't need his apology. But another part of me, one that had grown so much over the past few months, understood that this message wasn't for me. It was for him. He needed closure, and maybe, in some small way, I did too. I put the phone down, not replying immediately. I didn't need to engage. I had already done the hard work of letting go. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that responding would only serve to drag me back into the same cycle of lies and disappointment. I didn't need Jack's apology to move on. I smiled to myself. I was already moving on. The next day, I went to the beach for a photo shoot, this time, not as a painful reminder of what I had lost, but as a celebration of what I had gained. The salty air, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the vibrant colors of the sunset, it all felt like a symbol of renewal. I wasn't the woman who had walked this beach with Jack. I wasn't the one holding onto a broken promise. I was a new version of myself, ready to embrace whatever came next. While I was there, I ran into an old acquaintance from a few years back, Emily. We had lost touch when I married Jack, and seeing her again felt like a breath of fresh air. Ella, is that you? She asked, her voice filled with surprise. Wow, it's been forever. I smiled and gave her a hug. It really has. How are you? We spent the next half hour catching up. She had just moved back to the city after a few years abroad and was now working as a freelance writer. It felt good to reconnect with someone who knew me before I became consumed by my marriage. As we talked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of validation. The woman she was talking to now wasn't the person she remembered from the past. I had evolved, changed. I wasn't just a reflection of my marriage. I was Ella. I've heard about what happened with you and Jack, Emily said gently, her eyes softening with sympathy. I just wanted to say I'm really sorry. But I also want you to know that I am proud of how you've handled it. It takes a lot of courage to move on from something like that. Her words hit me harder than I expected. The weight of the past, the hurt, the confusion, it all started to feel distant. I wasn't the victim of Jack's betrayal anymore. I was the woman who had risen from it, the woman who had found her strength again. Thanks, Emily, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. It hasn't been easy, but I'm getting there. As the day came to a close, I watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. I was done looking backward. I had spent enough time questioning my choices, my worth. I was moving forward, and nothing was going to hold me back. When I returned home that evening, I sat down at my desk, scrolling through some of my photos from the shoot. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a message from Natalie. Ella, I think you should know there's been some talk around town about Jack. He's been spreading rumors about what happened between you two, making himself out to be the victim. I wasn't surprised. Jack had always been the type to manipulate the narrative when things didn't go his way. But I didn't care anymore. Let him talk. Let him try to twist the story. I wasn't going to let his words affect me. I had my truth, and that was all I needed. I don't care what he says, I replied to Natalie. The only story that matters is the one I'm living right now. I paused for a moment before adding, and I'm living it on my own terms. I put the phone down and smiled to myself. I wasn't the woman who needed validation from anyone. I had found my own worth. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece. And as I looked out the window at the city lights twinkling in the distance, I knew that this was just the beginning. The next few weeks passed in a blur of motion and calm. It was as if the storm that had raged through my life was finally subsiding, and I was learning to breathe again. The chaos that Jack and Lily had caused had faded into the background, leaving room for the new life I was building. The pain, though not entirely gone, no longer held dominion over me. I had taken my control back, and I was starting to see the world differently through a lens of possibilities rather than limitations. I continued to grow in my photography, experimenting with new techniques and styles. I started getting paid assignments, my work being featured in small exhibitions, and for the first time in years, I felt the joy of pursuing something that was truly mine. I was no longer a bystander in my own life. I was the one making the choices. Then one evening, while I was out with Natalie, something happened that caught me off guard. We were having dinner at a local restaurant, the familiar hum of conversation around us, when I saw him. Jack. He walked in with Lily, his arm wrapped around her waist. She was laughing at something he had said, her eyes shining with that same smug, possessive glow she had when I had first seen them together. And there he was, Jack, my ex-husband, now a man who seemed so small in comparison to the man I once thought I knew. They sat down at a table across the room, completely unaware of me. I watched them for a moment, the knot in my stomach tightening. Part of me wanted to feel angry, to feel betrayed again, but I didn't. The feeling that washed over me wasn't bitterness. It wasn't rage. It was indifference. "Are you okay?" Natalie asked, noticing my gaze. She followed my line of sight, then gave me a soft smile. "You don't have to look at them if it's too hard." But I shook my head, not feeling the pain I expected. "No, I'm fine. It's just strange, seeing him with her after everything." "You've come such a long way," Natalie said, her voice filled with admiration. "You're not the same woman he left behind. You're stronger now, and you don't need him to define who you are anymore." Her words hit me like a wave, but this time, it didn't pull me under. I had finally come to terms with everything. I had let go of the past and was no longer defined by the mistakes Jack had made or the betrayal he had caused. I had learned the hard way that love wasn't about holding on to someone who didn't value you. It was about loving yourself enough to walk away, to give yourself the space to grow. As the night wore on, I realized that I didn't need to see Jack to find closure. I didn't need to confront him again. The story between us had already been written, and it was no longer mine to change. When the evening ended, I walked out into the cool night air, taking a deep breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt completely free. Not just from Jack, not just from the pain of the past, but from the expectations of others, from the weight of living up to someone else's idea of who I should be. I had found my own path, and I was walking it with my head held high. A few days later, I received another message from Jack, but this time, there was no apology, no pleading. This time, it was different. The message was simple, and it hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting. "Ella, I'm sorry for everything. I know it's too late, but I want you to know that I'll always regret what I did. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." I read it once, twice, before putting my phone down. There was no bitterness in my heart, no anger, no sadness. I simply didn't care anymore. Jack had made his choices, and I had made mine. His message was a hollow echo of the man I once thought I knew. It didn't matter anymore. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, I lay in bed, reflecting on everything I had been through. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache, it had all shaped me, but it no longer defined me. I was not the woman who had been left behind. I was the woman who had learned to rise from the ashes, who had found her own strength, her own voice. And now, with that strength, I could finally say that I had let go. I was free. The following day, I met with Ben Harris again. This time, it wasn't just a casual coffee meetup. It was different this time. There was a connection between us that felt undeniable. He had always respected my space, always been patient, but this time, there was something more. As we sat across from each other, something shifted in the air, something subtle yet powerful. The way he looked at me, the way his smile reached his eyes, it was as if he had been waiting for this moment too. "Ella," Ben said softly, his voice low and sincere. "I've been meaning to ask you something. Would you consider taking a chance on something more?" The question hung in the air for a moment. I could feel my heart race, but it wasn't out of fear. It was out of excitement, out of hope. I smiled, meeting his gaze. "I think I'm ready," and with that, I realized that I wasn't just starting a new chapter of my life. I was beginning a new book, entirely one where I was the author, and this time, I was writing my own story.